It may be July, but who says we can't craft for Christmas? So today I am sharing some thrifty Christmas DIYs that you're definitely going to want to see. Let's get into it. Hey there, it's Donna. I'm so happy to have you joining me today. Let's get crafting. So if any of you know what this would have originally been used for, let me know down in the comments section because I am so curious. I removed the label. It was like about $2, and I'm going to be using these bottle brush trees along with a branch. I foraged this branch just from a nature walk. I'm going to be using this as tree trunks. So I just needed to cut them down. I also measured it for size to make sure that they were going to be tall enough so you could actually see the tree trunk sticking up. I left some of the little nubs that were on there as well, just for a more authentic look. I'm going to remove the bases of these bottle brush trees. If you smush it like I just did, you can just fluff that up a little bit. There's also some special techniques online that you can find to help fluff them up really well too. Trimming off the wire on the bottom, and I'm just going to see if my branch fits and continue to snip off the wire on the bottom until I have a nice touch point between the stick and the bottle brush tree. I'm using some hot glue to put that into place. Add it, and then you want to hold till that sets. Gonna take my glue gun and just add a little bit more into the bristles of the tree at the base. That way here it will just provide a nice sturdy branch attachment and it won't flop over on you. Now I'm going to add a bit of some hot glue to the base of our little silver piece, and you want to add some extra glue around it just to help to hold it securely to the base, and it will prevent it from flopping over as well. It does not take very long for the hot glue to set because of the cold metal surface. I'm going to add the other two trees as well, but I wanted to trim them down a little bit so they weren't all even straight across. I wanted them all to be different heights just to create a more natural look. So once I trim those down, I'm just going to go ahead and put those other trees into place as well. So you can see how they're all looking at this point. They look really cute, all tucked away in this silver container, and I'm really happy with how it is so far, but we need to fill in that base. So I'm gonna be using some preserved reindeer moss. I got this preserved reindeer moss from Dollar Tree. It's actually really nice for a project like this because it's not a big clump. So I was just shoving that in there, and then I'm going in and adding some faux snow. This faux snow is left over from a previous project. When I don't glue it down, then I try to save all my little bits so I can reuse it from project to project. Just sprinkle a little bit on top of the moss, and then that is it. This looked so good, and it was such an easy project, and it'll look great. You could add pine cones and some berries as well, but I like how simple this turned out. I have these scrap pieces of lumber. You can see here are the measurements, but I just wanted to let you know I got these from a scrap pile at a construction site. So if you're looking for some scrap wood and you know somebody who's building a house, ask them if you could dive into their scrap pile, because then you can get these pieces for free. You can see that I need to cover up the end of the lumber, that blue paint, as well as pencil mark and any abnormalities of the wood. I am using some white gesso. White gesso is a primer that artists use on their canvases. I use it all the time for my different projects. It works really good. But if you don't have something like this, you could definitely use some household primer paint. Just make sure that whatever you use, it is water-based, and you'll see why here in a moment. So I'm just going to cover the entire wood block with my gesso, and then I'm going to be setting it aside and allowing them to dry. Golden books. They are a highly sought after item. I actually found 2 of these ones, and I knew that I could use one of them for crafting, as there was some scribble marks in this one. I'm going to now take my book and I'm going to cut out the pages that I want to use. I've previously cut these 2 out, but I'm just going to show you how easy it is to cut into the page or into the book to remove a page. I'm just using my craft knife here. I needed just one more image since I have a set of 3 of the wood blocks. So now that I've got all those cut out, I'm going to now measure them on my dry wood blocks. So I'm just going to lay the paper in place, and I'm going to press along the edge so then I get a crease mark. Then I'll know exactly where I need to trim off that paper. So I'm just going to use a paper trimmer for this. Once it's all trimmed down, you can check to make sure that it fits, and it fits perfectly. So I did that to all three. And now I realize that the images on the back side of these book pages are dark. And I did notice that they showed through a little bit, but it wasn't actually that bad. So I just went ahead with the project as is. I'm using some tacky, Aleene's tacky glue, and I'm going to just put the paper next to the board so I know exactly where I need to place my glue. And then I'm going to use a plastic card to smooth it out. You want to make sure you get a good even layer, and you want to make sure you got glue all over the surface. Wherever there isn't any glue, there will be some air bubbles. You don't want your layer of glue to be too thick though, because then it will really saturate your paper. I really like Aleene's glue for projects like this. I placed the paper down into place, I smoothed it out with my bone folder, and then with the little excess glue on my card, I just added a little bit more wherever the paper was lifting. I even just slid that extra glue underneath the paper to make sure it just got on the paper and not on the board. So then I find that if you do that, then the paints just don't adhere properly, because I'm going to be adding more paint to this. Flipped it upside down, allowed that glue to set, and now I discovered that I wasn't gluing in, the edges of the boards are rounded slightly, so the edge of the paper didn't adhere to that edge. I decided to sand that down just with a sanding block and some sanding paper, and that did the trick just fine. So I did that to all three of our blocks. Now I'm going to use this off-white paint, and believe it or not, it's almost the exact same color as the gesso. I think because the gesso has got maybe the yellow wood underneath, it gave a bit of a warm hue to it. But all I'm going to do is just add just a little bit of the paint. I wanted to kind of blend in the book page with the wood block all the way around the edges. I just like that look. I don't know, there's something about it. I did give the entire block a coat of this paint, and then I allowed it to dry well. Once the paint has dried, you can give the entire piece a coat of some clear matte spray to protect the surface. And now you can just decide if you want to decorate this with some different elements. Here, I'm just going to show you what it looks like with a touch of some Christmassy greens. And then I'm also going to just lay them on the top, or however, you could add some beautiful berries as well. That would be a beautiful touch. But I decided I wanted to keep mine really simple. I'm just going to use some jute twine. So just to make it easier on myself, I'm stacking them up, and then I'm going to wrap the twine around. And you can see I'm just offsetting the twine as I wrap it. And then I'm going to just do a very simple bow, nothing fancy. Of course, you can get as fancy as you'd like here. You could even add a few pine cones. That might be a pretty touch. But what I did is just did my bow, and then I offset one of the blocks, one of the bows on the blocks to the right and the other one to the left. And the middle one was in the center of the wood block. On the bottom string, I just did a simple knot. So I decided to add one more little touch. I had this beautiful laser cut star, and I painted it with some champagne gold craft paint. This is put out by Deco Art. It's a really pretty gold color. I just applied that with some hot glue to the center block, and then it's ready for display. I love this so much. I can't wait to put it on display for the Christmas season. This is a fun piece, and I thought it would be great just to create a little wintry scene. So I needed to remove the price tag, and there was quite a bit of residue left over. So recently a viewer shared that I could use some rubbing alcohol to remove the adhesive. And I wanted to give that a try because I've tried Goo Gone and I've tried acetone and I haven't tried rubbing alcohol, and it worked really well. So thank you to whoever that was. I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was offhand, but thank you so much. I'm using some cream paint here, and I'm out of chalk paint, so I thought I'm going to add a little bit of my gesso to the cream paint, and I thought that would help with the adhesion to this slick wood surface. Now I could have sanded it down, but I was being lazy, plus I didn't want the adhesion to be too good because I want to be able to distress this. So I gave 2 coats to the entire piece, and then I set it aside and allowed it to dry well. I have a selection of some different figurines here, and of course I didn't like that yellow and orange mushroom, so I'm going to use this red chalk paint from Deco Art, and I'm going to coat this mushroom here to make it a little more Christmassy. So I did end up having to give this about 2 to 3 coats of paint. I found that the paint was actually surprisingly quite translucent, and I'm not sure why that is because chalk paint usually isn't like that. Here I'm putting the dots back in by just using that off-white paint that I had already used for those wood blocks. I'm just using the end of my paintbrush to put those back in place. I allow those to dry well, and now I'm going to seal it all up with some matte varnish. I love this matte varnish from Deco Art. I use it on a lot of my projects. It just helps seal everything up so it doesn't chip away, like, you know how craft paint can be. So if you've got some wax, feel free to use that if you're using some chalk paint. So here's my wood box. It's all nice and dry. Now I'm going to use my sanding block and some sanding paper to distress all the edges. So this is the reason why I didn't want like the adhesion to be too good at this point, but it was enough that I wasn't scraping off the paint off the flat surface when I was going in there with my sanding block and my sanding paper. So I'm just going to continue to sand away until I get a look that I am happy with. I'm just using a rag to dust my wood box as well as my surface because I've missed that before, and then I get debris back onto my project and it looks icky. Now I'm going to seal this all up with the matte varnish, and by doing this, the distressing really pops. I love to use the matte varnish for projects like this. I allowed it to dry, and now I'm going to place all my figurines and my bottle brush trees into place. I like to figure out where I want all my placements to be before I glue things into place. I've picked up my figurines and bottle brush trees at different dollar stores as well as different craft stores, so you'll have to see where you can find some around where you live. I'm using some hot glue to just put everything in place, and I realized after the fact that I should have added my glue and moss in between before I glued my little coyote in place. Coyote, fox, wolf, I'm not sure what it is. It looks like a coyote to me, but I should have done that before I put this guy into place because it ended up becoming a little bit more difficult to add those touches, and I'll show you what I ended up doing here in a moment. I decided to add some branches. This is something I love to do. I find that with little wintry scenes like this, it just adds a nice natural element. And once that has set, you can now add your moss. I'm using hot glue and I'm going to press the moss into place. I am using preserved reindeer moss, and then I'm just going to continue to add it. So this is where I realized that I was like, uh-oh, how am I going to get in behind all these little guys? And what I did is just stuck my glue gun in the center and allowed the glue to just drop down onto the surface. And then I went in and pressed the moss into place using my knife. It had a nice pointy tip. I wanted to add some faux snow, and I am wanting it to stay in place. So I'm just adding some touches of some hot glue, and I'm going to just press that into place. Just adding some little touches here and there. You could add some pine cones and berries as well for this one, but I love how this turned out. I think it's such a fun and whimsical piece. There are some really cool thrifty Christmas ideas in this video right here. I want to thank you for joining me, and we'll see you over there. Take care. Bye.